Hello and welcome to today's Next Level Success webinar series that will teach you all about the home building process. Our presenter today is Sarah Medina. Sarah handles sales and marketing at Heartland Builders, where she spent the last 2 years doing what she loves most. Before joining the team, Sarah sold real estate, and new construction was always where her heart was. Heartland Builders turned out to be the right fit, a company whose core values and integrity align with who she is as a person. Heartland has been building in the West Michigan area for 28 years, and Sarah's here today to share what makes the building process worth getting excited about. Welcome, Sarah, and thank you to all for being on the call today.
Rich or Cindy would be here. Rich and Cindy own Heartland Builders. If you've done anything with us in the past, it was usually them, but today it's just me, probably less jokes, but hopefully still some good information, some good times. I like it a little bit more interactive. For me, it's just more fun as a presenter if people are asking questions and participate. I don't care if it's in the chat or unmute your microphone, anything like that. Feel free to interrupt me. It's not rude. I actually prefer it if you have questions. More than likely, somebody else has that question too. So I'm going to share my screen so you have an idea of what we're talking about here. All right, can everybody see my presentation?
It looks good.
Lovely. Let me see if I can rearrange some things. Perfect. This is what we call Home Building 101, 201, and 301 for realtors. So it is one class. We just cover a lot in these 2 hours. Like I said, questions, stop me, comments, also feel free to stop me. There's a lot of information here. The building science is probably most realtors' favorite part because that is some of what to look for in new construction, but also what to look for in houses that have been built. But we will cover more than that. Speaking of, I can just get into the agenda here. So next screen, I'm just gonna take a second to learn your goals to make sure that I'm covering the things that you want to learn. We'll talk about like, should your clients build? And obviously for me as a builder, yes, they absolutely should. But we'll talk through remodels and why that might be an option as well. At Heartland Builders, we don't remodel. We are a custom on your lot home builder. So we build on our clients' land, but we still, if you want to remodel, we respect that. And we just like to talk about the pros and cons. We'll talk about the client handoff. So how you as a realtor can work with a builder or Heartland Builders, or how that relationship can work. How to choose a builder and help your clients choose a builder, what to ask, what to look for, all of those kinds of things. The site evaluation, which is another favorite, I think, for realtors. Like when you're going out to a site as a builder, we don't care how much land costs. It does not matter to us. We are not looking at the market and market value, things like that. We're looking at site improvement costs. We are looking at what is going to cost to get that site ready for the house that our clients want to build on it. So when we're looking at a blank piece of land, we're sharing what we're looking at so that you can start to look at those same things too. Contracts and contingencies. So we will not get into like the details of contracts, just kind of talk about basically an overview of what that looks like. Financing and how a construction loan works for your clients. Build University is that building science and how things come together, what to look for, and things like that as far as your actual building or the house. We'll have time for any questions, but again, stop me if you have any. And then a quick how to get started with us. So if you could just unmute your microphone. I don't see my chat anymore. It's probably just because I'm not super in tune with Zoom. But either way, if you could just unmute your microphone, shout out a couple of things that you guys hope to learn, and I want to write it down, just make sure we cover those things. And then this is super helpful for me. And I'm comfortable with the silence, so I will wait until I have at least 3 things.
How to help clients from start to finish in the building process, what that looks like.
Love that. I'm ready for more.
What to be aware of in the permitting process?
Okay.
Why build?
Love it. That is 3 for me, so I will move on. But if you have something that we're just covering the tip of the iceberg and you want to learn more, shout it out. I'm happy to talk through it. So,
How about inspections during the process?
all right, love that. Perfect. I feel like this is going to cover one of them. So should your clients consider building a custom home? A lot of it comes down to price and what you want, location, all of those kinds of things. But a lot of times, building new, you're just not getting exactly what you want. Like, you know, as a realtor, if you can check off 80% of your wants and needs and wish list, you buy that house, because you are not going to find 100% of the things that you want exactly. By building new, you can also have some of that energy efficiency, so you lower utility bills in the future and things like that. Remodeling, like with remodeling, you're still going to have an old part of the house. You're still going to have some upkeep. You're not going to replace all of those mechanicals at once. Whereas in building a new house, you have all new mechanicals and things like that. Your electrical is up to code, kind of easier to do little DIY projects and things like that. Really, your client needs about a month to build a new house. We say it takes about a year to build, and then we'll get into the process of why that looks like that with pre-construction and construction and things like that. But that's going back and forth. Should they build? Should they not build? It goes down to timeline. It goes down to price. It goes down to location, and honestly, just what you want to do. We'll talk through when to get a builder involved. We say, like, right at the beginning. So one of our number one most important pieces of advice that we can give a client is to never buy a piece of property without having a builder look at that property first. But the builder needs to know what the client wants on that property. Otherwise, the builder is just going to go out there and say, like, yep, this is a beautiful piece of dirt. So we say get a builder in, you know, somewhat early. Even if the client wants to buy the land and then, you know, take a decade to pay it off, it's still nice to get somebody involved early just so that they know what they're looking at. And then what comes first, the land or the house plan? We say it really does go together. As far as the house plan, start thinking about, you know, if you want a ranch or a 2-story, what's important to you, or same thing, like what's important to your clients and what they're looking for. And then the land usually comes down to location, but we have plenty of clients who are like, we just live in the city, we want to live in the country, vice versa. We do probably about 40% of our business are lakefront teardowns. We'll get into that a little bit too. For a lakefront teardown, we really are just looking at the building envelope, and we're putting a house inside that building envelope because the lots are so tight, so small, things like that. So that's kind of another thing. So what comes first, the land or the house plan? We say they come together. And then for negotiating the cost of a new home, there really is no negotiating because we don't have the equity like a seller would have to negotiate. So as far as the new home, we like to be transparent in pricing and just show you all the pricing, show you what you're paying for, show you what your money goes towards. And there's not really much negotiation in that. For the next little part there, the average cost per square foot, we get so many calls about all people want are like, what is your current price per square foot? And we say price per square foot doesn't make any sense. What builders like to say is we can compare it to like price per pound for a car. Like, it does not make sense. And it's the same with price per square foot. You can have 2 identical houses. You can have this floor plan right here and it's exactly the same. And one, maybe the site improvement costs were 40% of the entire cost of the house. And the other one, the site improvement costs were 20%. If a brick house is more, the price per square foot is going to be more. Usually it goes like bigger houses are lower price per square foot and things like that. So we say your average price per square foot just doesn't make sense. We like to go by actual numbers. And really the most significant part of a cost per square foot in an existing home, it's my next little slide. Does anybody have an idea of what that is? Like, what is the most significant part of the cost per square foot in an existing house? I am comfortable with the silence and I will wait.
Hey, can you repeat that question for me?
Sure. What is the most significant part of cost per square foot in an existing house? So in the houses that you sell, really for overall, what makes a house more expensive or less expensive?
The materials, upgrades, granite, things like that. And the neighborhood.
Yeah, the neighborhood, really, it is location. So we'll talk about like where you have one bucket of money when you build a house, and where does that bucket of money go? There's really three parts. About 60% of that bucket of money is going to be everything through all of your structure. So everything through drywall, really. That includes your mechanicals. That's really square footage when you really want to save or spend money in new building. It's in your square footage. 20% is going to go into site improvement costs. Those are the things that you can't necessarily do anything about. 20% and the site improvement costs, that's your tree clearing, a well, a septic, driveway, things like that. The last 20% are your selections, those pretty things that go into the house, and siding, things like that. So all of those selections. But then really when you're looking at the difference, when you're building a house and you're looking at the difference between like a granite or a laminate countertop, that's about 5% of your budget. So that's just the smallest part of your budget. We'll also get people who will call and they'll say, we want a very simple $3,000 square foot house. And you're like, we understand the simple part, but if you want that square footage, if you want a bigger home, then it's going to be more expensive because that's where the majority of your budget is coming from. But then when you look at all of the price together of a house and the land included, land is just more expensive in those more desirable areas, the same as houses. Houses are more desirable or more expensive in those more desirable areas, which again brings me all the way back around to the average price per square foot in a house new build or even current does not always make sense. And then this is a flyer that we have, but I just like to break it down. When you're also looking at price per square foot, rooms are different price per square foot. Like your kitchen is going to be your most expensive price per square foot. These numbers don't necessarily make sense anymore. The flyer still makes sense, but you know, a primary bath is much more than $220 a square foot now. But it's just showing like a primary bath at $220 a square foot is going to be much more expensive than the living room at $190 a square foot. So it's just showing the difference of different areas of the house are different cost per square foot. So a lot of times you'll see maybe a production builder and the house is very big, say it is 3,500 square feet, and it's giant living rooms and giant bedrooms. Those are the least expensive places to build, but the kitchen is still going to be the same size as like their maybe 2,000 square foot house. So different areas of the house have different price per square foot. This comes into, should you remodel or build new? Like I said, maybe 40% of our business is tear down. Some of those are lakefront. We did one here in Grand Haven. They wanted an infill or a city lot. Sometimes we'll do an old farmhouse where it's on 10 acres, but there's already a house there. It's just not necessarily livable anymore. So those clients consider like, should we remodel? And maybe they got quotes. And a lot of times what we hear is they got quotes for maybe $350,000 and they're like, really for $550 I could have a whole new house. So those are things to consider. Obviously the cost, the size of the remodel, and then the timeline, how long it's going to take. If in your current house you're looking at foundation problems, you have to consider that when you're looking at additions. And then you're going to get new siding. If you do a portion of the house, you're going to match that to the rest of the house or reside the whole house, and things like that. There's just a lot to consider when remodeling. You could be looking at several hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is why I said a lot of times clients will come to us and say, like, we spent a little bit more when we get all new. That's the route we want to take. After the remodel is finished, will the client be happy with what they are left with? Because you're working with a footprint that already exists. You're not starting with exactly what works for you. Some things that you can't necessarily fix are like ceiling heights. I mean, you can, that's just a tricky one. The footprint that you're working in, if you're going to do an addition, obviously you can add more space, but if you're just rearranging what's already in there, you're just subject to the space that's already there. We often say, think about how to make the current space more efficient before you add more space, just to save money. And we'll do that in architectural design too. To use a space more efficiently usually goes a lot further than just adding square footage. The municipality plays a big role. It does in building as well, for permitting and things like that. But will the municipality allow you to change the house in the way that you want it to when you're thinking of remodeling? There's still setback requirements and lot coverage ratio when you're doing additions as well as when you're building. So just things to consider. This is a question we get all the time. If I tear down but keep one wall, can I avoid new zoning restrictions, opening your tax assessment and things like that? Like, that's not a thing. That's not a thing that we have ever found. I don't know if it's something like any of you have ever found, but we talk to municipalities all day, every day. It's just what we do. It's just not a thing. I don't know if it was an old thing, but if a client asks you that, the answer is like, no, that doesn't exist. It's not a thing. How much does it cost to tear a house down? We calculate about $20,000. And I always like to share that number just because I think it's such a lower number than what most people think it is. So a lot of times you'll think if you buy a lakefront house and you tear it down and build a new one, like they must have a lot of money. And I would not fight you on that. They probably do have a lot of money. But I just think the thought of that tear down is adding $20,000 to the price of the land, which is what they paid for the house and the land altogether, which we think is just like not a huge deal. A tear down usually takes a day or 2 days. There are things to consider like asbestos, then you have to take care of it separately, wire lines and things like that. But really the cost to tear down a house, about $20,000. And then the last one, sometimes if a person just like loves their house and loves their location, that is worth it to them to remodel versus going and finding a vacant piece of land and building on that. So back and forth for both. This goes into how to ensure a smooth handoff with a builder. So if you are referring your clients to a builder and you're like, well, how do I do that? Am I calling builders? Am I, seeing if they pay my commission? Like, what are you doing? I usually say, like, do your homework before you'll ever refer a client. Know kind of what price points builders build in, know their personality, their philosophy, what's important to them, what's important to your client, and just kind of match that so that you know that the builder that you are suggesting can deliver on the client and your expectations. So this is what we kind of ask for to share client information, like who's going to be living there, which is that family characteristics and what they like, what they dislike, what they're looking for and what they haven't found. We often will work with realtors who say, like, I showed them 10 houses to 15 houses. They can find what they're looking for. So now they just want to build. We just kind of want to know, like, what were they looking at that they did like and didn't like, so we can start to have some of those ideas. Budget is huge. Budget is a huge part of building in general. And if that budget includes land or is separate from the land, things like that. But when you're doing a handoff, the budget's a really nice thing to know. I mean, we're going to get to the bottom of it either way because we need to know budget. But if you already know it and you can share that with the builder, super helpful. Their time frame. So if they need to be in house before school starts, or if they can wait a full year for their house to be built, that's also important to know to make sure you're setting the correct expectations. And then just personalities or anything fun about the client that's really helpful for a builder to be prepared for. And then your role, we usually say attend that first meeting, make that introduction, make sure what they're getting into aligns with what they were telling you that they want. Make sure they're going to have that good experience. And then we always say, let them design their home. We've had realtors in the past come with their clients to architectural or interior design meetings, and you're more than welcome to. But we also say, like, at some point, there's too many cooks in the kitchen just because there's an architectural designer in there, there's the interior designer, then there's the clients. And we also always say it's their house, it's not our house. So we usually just say, attend that first meeting and just make sure you're setting them up for a good experience. This goes into how to select a builder. So this is one of our favorites. We do home building 101 for clients in general. So if you ever do have a client who's considering building, even if they don't have any land yet, or they might be really far off, it's just a fun little seminar that we hold. That's also about 2 hours. We'd say that we're not locking the doors. You don't have to build with Heartland Builders, but it is important to know how to choose a builder. So the first thing, you select your builder based on philosophy, not on price. And you might say, like, what is my philosophy? What are my buyers' philosophy? Like, what are my clients' philosophy? What does that mean? And how does that make sense? Once you start asking questions and meeting with builders and learning what's important to you and your client, you'll start to understand your philosophy. If price is the only thing that's important, you want to find a builder who can, build within that price point. Energy efficiency and universal design is important to us at Heartland Builders. There are luxury builders and there are builders like right down the middle. And then there's production builders who are doing the neighborhoods. Once you start talking to builders and start talking about what your client wants, you'll understand their philosophy and your philosophy. Always review a builder's website and ask questions on what you've read. We say to do that just to make sure it's matching like what they said online is matching what they said and say in person and things like that. But looking at a website is also obviously a good place to start. Your price range should match the builder's price range. So that's a good starting place. It's just budget in general. Checking online reviews. So you can obviously check Google reviews and things like that, but one of my favorite things to do is just to ask ChatGPT, because ChatGPT will find all of the reviews online, put it together for you, and start reading from that. We use Guild Quality. That's something that not just builders use, but it's a third party that will survey your client. So we survey 3 times during the build process, after design, after the house is finished, and then long after the house is finished. And then what you see on Guild Quality are actually the words straight from our clients. We publish what they say, and we look at all of those reviews as a team. And if there's something that could have been done better, we look through our process and see where we could make changes. But going back to, check online reviews, it's super important when you're looking for a builder and looking for a builder that'll match what your clients want. Ask about the architectural design process and what it's going to look like to get your client a floor plan. So is it going to be in-house? Are they going to hire that separate? Or are they going to hire off of the builder's recommendation? Basically, how is that architectural design process going to work? That difference between an architect and an architectural designer, just if you didn't know, I would say like 95% of the building permits that are pulled in West Michigan are drawn by an architectural designer. So an architect is required over 3,500 square feet. So they are doing those $5 million properties, $4 million, $3 million properties, and also a lot of commercial buildings. An architectural designer usually also has a degree. They are working in some kind of software to build your plans, make changes and things like that. But there is a difference between an architect and an architectural designer. There's also a difference in how much you pay them and how their process works. So just kind of learn what you're looking for, what your clients want, and just know like an architect will charge, I think it's 10% of the price of the home, which is a lot more than an architectural designer. Usually you're paying by the hour. With us, we're a design build firm. We have an architectural designer on staff, and the price of that whole thing is already in the price of your house. But just kind of ask how the builder handles that. And then the design capabilities, what software are they using? Are they literally just sketching it out? Are you doing permit only plans, or are you doing all of the details, and what's that going to look like for your clients? And then ask a builder how they manage the actual building process. Selections is a big deal. So that's all the pretty things that's going to go in their house. But also if you're choosing like your concrete outside and things like that. So it's not only pretty things, but all of the selections need to be kept track of. How are they going to do that? How are they going to keep everything organized? And is your client going to be able to use an interior designer or a selections coordinator? Or are they totally doing it on their own? It's important to know, and it's important to know how that's going to be charged, how's your cost, and all of those kinds of things as well. And then also, does the builder have a design studio, or are they going to 10 different places to go to flooring and plumbing and the lighting store? It takes a really long time to even drive to those different stores. So know what your client wants, know what the builder has, align all of that. And then just what technology they're using, Builder Trend, Co-Construct, or just a spreadsheet is fine. Just kind of have an idea of what they're doing, how they're keeping things organized. On-site meetings, what does that look like? Is your client going to be meeting with the builder? Are they informal? Are they formal? Just what does the process look like throughout construction? How are they going to keep track of the schedule of construction? And how are they going to stay on track with that schedule of construction? I think most clients fear when they're building a new house is just all of the horror stories that people went over budget and over timeline. So you want to talk to a builder about how they're going to manage that. And then the last one is warranty. A 1-year warranty is most common, but just ask the builder how they're going to handle the warranty. Is the client going to reach out to them? Are you going to reach out to the client? And what's that going to look like? What's covered by manufacturer? Those kinds of things. The little flyer on the right that says 4 simple steps, that's our process. That's what we follow at Heartland Builders. So a client can follow that all the way through. We talk about it at the beginning, we talk about it when they sign the contracts, all of those kinds of things, but it just keeps it organized so you know what's going to happen and simplifies it quite a bit as well. This is just a continuation of how to select a builder. So a builder gets paid on monthly draws. So there's a difference between a builder who starts in, a week from a new client versus who starts in 6 months of a new client. But a builder gets paid when they take draws out on the construction loan. We'll talk about a little bit more about how a construction loan works. But you'll want to ask a builder, how are they handling those monthly draws? How many are they doing? Because after 6, a client gets charged for those monthly draws as well. So it's important to know how organized they are, to know how many draws they're taking. There's a sworn statement, and that is basically, it's like a glorified spreadsheet, and it says like framing labor, framing materials, and it has all the money associated with that. That is what the builder is sending to the lender when the builder needs a draw or needs to be paid. And then the lender is sending out an inspector to say like, yep, all of these materials are here, everything has been done, here's your money. And then the lien waivers are like if the plumber did work and then the builder pays the plumber is going to sign a lien waiver saying like, I won't hold a lien against this house because I got paid. So those are all important things when you're talking about money to ask a builder or ask a builder for your client. Like, how are you handling the money? How are you showing your client all of this information? Change orders are huge when building custom. So there's ways to avoid change orders by selecting all of your choices, your selections before you ever break ground. That's a big thing that we do. But basically, when you're trying to choose a builder, ask how they handle change orders. We say 100% of the time it should be in writing in advance of the work so that your client knows what's coming and how it's going to work, how much money it's going to cost, and things like that if there are any changes during construction. This says 99% of writing in advance because when you're drilling the well, they will do their homework. They'll look at well logs, and maybe that well is going to go down to 80 feet. But if they need to go down to 95 feet, they're not going to stop. And that comes in a change order afterwards. But that's the one thing that will come in a change order after the work was done. Everything else should come in before the work is done. You hear plenty of change order stories also that the client got to the end of the build, their house was done, and then they're like, here's a change order for $50,000, and you pay change orders in cash. You can't get those financed or anything like that. And they didn't even know any changes were coming. So that's super scary. It's important to ask how those are handled. The Home Builders Association, so there is a Lakeshore Home Builders Association and Grand Rapids. Every area or region has one, similar to like WMLAR and Realtor associations. There's a Michigan Home Builders Association too, but it's important that a builder is just a part of that and a professional. It's a way to network with different trades and things like that as well. And then obviously the feel-good reason, just like a realtor, you know them, you like them, you trust them. We always say, start with your head, ask all of these questions, and then follow your heart. You'll want to ask how long the building process takes, and that kind of goes down to process, how the builder has process organized, and then also a budget too. We like to build between $500,000 and $2 million. Below that is a different quality of house, and above that is a different process. So ask about the process and how long that takes. And then basically the blue square there is just saying how long does the process take with Heartland. We say it takes about a year to build a house. That's 4 or 5 months in pre-construction, 6 or 7 months in building the house in the actual construction process. Does anybody want to break? I need at least one yes or no, please.
No.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Just needed to know if somebody was still listening to me. Okay, next up we'll get into land site evaluation and what to look for and what we look for. So we are not buying land. Heartland Builders does not own any land. We are building on our client's land, which is why it's very important for like our realtor partners and realtors that we're referring to know how this site evaluation process works. The number one most important piece of advice that we give clients is to never buy a piece of land without having the builder come and look at the land first. And again, that kind of goes to what I was saying at the beginning. the builder needs to know what the client wants as well. Otherwise, they're just going to say like, yep, looks good. Without knowing what they want, you don't know anymore. But having a builder come out and look is where it's going to come in handy, that they're going to know site improvement costs. So if it's a very wooded lot, they have to remove a ton of trees. If they know this area has a high water table, or if the site eval perk test, which are the same thing, if that came in that needs a mound septic versus a conventional septic, you're looking at different amounts of money. Site improvement costs are usually about 20% of the cost of a new construction house. They can be less. Usually production builders, if they're building in a cornfield and they have already segmented out all of these pieces of property, they know the site improvement costs for each piece of property, how long the driveway is going to be, municipal hookups, however they're doing that. So a lot of times your production builders, which are the builders who put up neighborhoods or a lot of houses, they already know their site improvement costs, and they're a lot less than if you're building like in the country on 40 acres, 1,000 feet back from the road. We always say we want your client to buy their opportunity and not somebody else's problem. So consider when it's the last lot in a finished neighborhood or the last empty lake lot and things like that, why it might be. These little pictures are showing, this is the GIS picture. So those orange lines are some contours. This teal line is showing this client's property. And then the white picture here is a site plan. So you do this during architectural design, and you can see like they are going to put their house here. And you can also see there's naturally kind of a driveway and a clearing here. So it would have been a lot less expensive to put the house here, but they don't own this piece of property. And they said, you know, we're building in the country. If a neighbor decides to build right here, then you're no longer get the privacy of the country. So you can see they came back on their driveway and then they went out. Their house ended up being kind of over here. This is also showing where the septic is going to be and where the well is going to be, how the house is going to sit. This is the concrete pad in front of it. The electric lines coming back and gas line coming back. So that's just what a site plan looks like, and then what it's going to look like on that piece of land. Again, site evaluation and what to look for. We say it's not just the cost of the site, it's the cost to improve the site. That is what is important to a builder and important to a client who's building on that piece of land. These are some things that you can go through and you can do if you are helping a client buy a vacant piece of property. Look up the land on the GIS. Every county has one. You can literally just Google Kent County GIS or Ottawa County GIS. It ends up looking like this. You can see who owns the property. These teal lines are the contours, so you can see where the hills are and things like that. I've seen plenty of vacant land listings that say like, all set for a walkout. But if you go out to the land and it's flat, like that's not set up for a walkout. Like maybe that person didn't know what a walkout was, or they're just trying to sell it. Either way, it's nice to know the contours. And just side note, little fun fact. We look for 8 to 10 feet of decline for a walkout, about 5 to 8 for a daylight. A flat lot's going to have a full basement. Look up the wetland map just to know if there are any wetlands in that area. If you have to get Eagle involved, like say it's a wetland all the way around in a high area right in the middle, then your driveway needs to go through a wetland. You're going to get Eagle involved to put in a culvert. So kind of nice to know if you're going to have those things. Eagle can also delay things quite a bit. So if they need to be in the house within 1 year, they're building custom, this might not be the piece of property for them because Eagle is going to take a little bit. Checking the contours, I already talked about. That's the hills out there. The driveway length is a site cost to consider just because obviously the longer it is, the more expensive it will be. And that really is the same with whatever material you're using, with gravel, with asphalt, with concrete. Another fun fact, asphalt is less expensive than concrete. I get that question a lot, so thought I'd throw it up there. And then the longer your driveway is means, you know, your house is sitting back further. So it's also the cost to get electrical, natural gas, water, and sewer back there. If it's on well and septic, then you're kind of the same if you're sitting close to the road, but consider those things. Tree clearing, if it's very wooded. And then also for tree clearing, you have to consider the whole driveway, not just where the house is going to sit. And to get electrical back there, the electrical needs 10 feet on either side of that. For the electrical line, so there's a lot more tree clearing than just where the house is going to sit. And then well and septic, if they need that, it's more costly than municipal sewer and water. And then if it is septic, we say always get a perk test. Your sanitarian is going to do the perk test. That is how they know what the soil looks like for the water to percolate through, basically, from your drain field in your septic system.
Hey Sarah, can I
Yeah.
share a quick story?
Yeah.
One thing to be aware of as well is your cable, your internet. Um, my in-laws built a new house literally 30 seconds up the hill from their house that we just bought, gutted and remodeled, did all the things. And Verizon is all over the place around them. But in order to get Verizon up the hill or across the road, it would have cost them over $8,000 to bring that to their house, even though it's closer to the main drag than their previous house, just where their, what they call it, I don't know, their pole or whatever, it would have cost a small fortune. So they ended up having to get the fancy satellite internet or whatever, and then Dish TV to try to get their cable channels that they can't live without. So, and
Yeah.
it was
Well,
right there. Like you could see it, but
yeah, that's absolutely a good point. There is a website that you can go to that says what area, what internet you can get. That's
we
even
did
for,
that. Yep,
yeah,
we
yeah,
did that. And they all said, oh, yeah, it's here. Oh, yeah, you can do
yeah.
Frontier over here too. No, you can't.
Good to
So I
know.
would not trust that website. I would call and ask them right directly. Make sure
Yeah.
you talk to the construction side, not the regular 800 number that everybody else calls. It was a massive, massive headache. And my
Yeah.
in-laws are older. They, didn't really understand why they can't just get their same Verizon that they've had for a gazillion years. It was painful,
Yeah.
painful.
Good point for sure. Back to the well and septic and the perk tests and things like that. If they're close to neighbors, it's not just your well and septic. It has to be 50 feet away from the water line, or the wellhead, which I'm sure you guys know anyways. You see that in inspections and things like that. But it's the location of the neighbors as well. If it's in a tight lake lot or a tight city lot, something like that, and there happens to be septic, you have to consider your neighbor's septic as well. So location and then how that's going to sit out there. If it's near water and you need a soil and erosion permit with a silt fence, that's something that the road commission does. Soil and erosion isn't like necessarily a break the bank when you're building a $850,000 house, but it's nice to know if you need it out there. High wind considerations, like on Lake Michigan, you might need a different quality of siding, different quality of windows, things like that. So that's going to add to the price. And then one thing that I don't have in here, but also in those tight lake lots, if you're closer than 10 feet to your neighbor, many times you'll need fire rated siding and fire rated windows, which can significantly add to the price of the house. If they're planning on vinyl siding and now you need hardy, it could be a big difference. The water table, where that's going to sit, and then you can always get soil borings. We always do soil borings on a waterfront property, but they go deeper than what your site eval is going to see what the soil is, kind of a little bit deeper than what your septic would need. Then we always ask too, like, what's important to our prospects? Do they want a yard for their kids to play in or the dogs to run in? If they want a future pole barn, a walkout lower level, if they want a pool in the future, things like that. So what's important for them to have now or in the future, and will that fit on the property? And then municipality, like I said, always plays a big role. Is it zoned properly? Are the setbacks going to allow them to have the kind of house they want? If there are HOA bylaws or municipality restrictions, that's saying like maybe they need to have an 812 pitch on their roof or 612 pitch on their roof or something like that. Different colors of siding, different square footage of houses, things like that, also important to know. And then any concerns about the drinking water. My friend at Pioneer, his name is Chad, he said you can filter anything. He was big during PFAS around Rockford when that first started coming out and things like that. But it's also still nice to know if there's vacant land near an airport, more than likely there's PFAS in the water. I think it's the de-icer that comes off of the planes, ends up going into the water source. And there's PFAS, the high nitrates in a farm field. Ottawa County has a fun clay layer that, depending on where your well is sitting, if you can get water, or if it's not being stocked basically when it rains. So all things to consider when you're looking at a site. This is a fun one. So this talks about getting a walkout or a high water table. So if it's a flat lot, that's what this is showing. So originally it was a flat lot. We basically scraped away the black dirt and then we put the foundation right at ground level. So if you were looking at it, you are looking at the side of the foundation. You can kind of see these pictures. So this is the foundation, like you would be standing here, my 5'4" wouldn't even come to the top of this wall. And then you can start to see like their driveway is a little steeper. This was probably, at that time, it was probably like $35,000 worth of dirt. Today, it's probably $45,000 to $50,000 worth of dirt. So to get that walkout, you'll need enough property that you can have a driveway that's not going to be too steep to drive up it. And then also just consider if they have enough space around the house and things like that. We're also doing one of these in Nunica. Nunica is known for a higher water table. The water table is like 12 inches down. So at that one, we didn't even scrape off the black dirt. We just brought in new soil, set the foundation right on top of that soil, and we're building up from there. We're going to bring in the dirt. For that one also, we are digging out a pond so that we can use that soil to backfill the house and save them that $50,000. So there are things that you can do, but this picture and the next couple kind of shows if they're on a high water table or if they have to have that walkout basement, what that will look like. We did this retaining wall just because they wanted a window here. But you don't necessarily have to do that retaining wall. You can feather out the dirt around there to have a nice incline that you can still mow and things like that around the house. They just happen to want this window here. And then here's one picture of the side yard. There's another one too. But you can start to see like this hill was all brought in. This was the main floor. So just kind of nice to know. If you want to walk out, we can actually absolutely give you a walkout. It's just going to be another $50,000 in dirt, and dirt isn't sexy. It's not fun to show off to your friends. Just something to consider, and it goes back to that high water table too. So here are the last pictures of these ones. And again, this was ground level. All of this dirt, this hill was brought in here. This is the side view. Obviously you want to pull into your garage, which is why there's the hill up the driveway into it. And then this is the back of the property. This was that main ground level. So kind of fun to talk about that one, talk about site eval and different things that you can do with the property. Just have to know the site improvement to be able to do those. This goes into the municipality. Again, it plays a big role. This is a lakefront property here, and it's built up like this because there wasn't a ton of space. This was one of those that we just basically took the building envelope and put a house into that. This one has an elevator too, just because there's 3 floors that they're going up and down. And then this one doesn't show it as well, but there's a whole creek that goes around this property. The garage is angled a little bit, and we changed the other side of the house to fit in there properly and still fit in with soil and erosion restrictions, municipality restrictions, and things like that. So setbacks are where the municipality will say, if you have 5 acres, you have to be 50 feet off the front, 50 feet off the back, 10 feet off the sides. At 5 acres, it doesn't necessarily matter. If you have a 1/4 acre, it's definitely going to matter for where your house is sitting. And then think about the things that your clients might want now or in the future. Is there enough room for the pole barn or the pool, for the well, for the septic, and those kinds of things. The county will sometimes have requirements as well. So I always say start with the smallest governing body and move up from there. Side note, I say that with Airbnbs too, but start with that with the HOA, and then go to the township, then go to the county, then look at the state. But it's important to know all of those rules and restrictions, especially if you're looking to do something that's unique. But if you're not, it's still nice to know any kind of restrictions that come along with that property. The septic system, if there's a tear down in an existing septic, are you tearing that out? Are you reusing it? Can you reuse it? And then is there enough space for the septic to be 50 feet away from the wellhead? Lot coverage ratio. Again, if you're on a 1/4 acre and the lot coverage ratio is half, say like an 1/8 of an acre or something like that. That's not how they say it. It's an 1/8 of an acre, but just for easy way to think of it, you can only build within half of that. So your house has to sit within that, but it can't cover more. And then some municipalities will say the deck is included, the driveway is included, and some will not. So important to know what the municipality lot coverage ratios are and then what's included in that. Height restrictions are a big one on lakefront properties. It's usually about 35 feet. Again, in the country, they don't necessarily care how high you go. On a lakefront, you don't want to block your neighbors' views. And then utilities, can you get utilities back there? Do you have to clear more trees? and then goes back to that internet and things like that too. This is going in a little bit different direction. This is a good example of when we say, you know, if it's the last vacant lot on a lakefront or in a city, in a development, why is it that last lake? Why is it that last vacant lot? So a couple fun things. This was on an artesian spring. We ended up doing 62 piers that were 70 feet deep. This up here, you can see a little bit of it is called a guy wire. That is something that we couldn't move. That wire had to stay. So it ended up changing the size of the garage to make sure that we could still build under that. There was a sewer manhole in the driveway that we had to work around, so we couldn't end up paving the driveway. And then the lot coverage ratio included the deck, but again, we couldn't pave the driveway, A, because of that manhole cover, and B, because of the lot coverage ratio. So is it buildable? Yes, absolutely it is. But I will say those helical piers are not cheap. They added a lot to the cost. This client happened to know, they knew all of this going into it. They knew it was going to cost more. So nothing was necessarily a surprise at this point, but it's still fun to look at and see, like, this was the vacant lot. This is once we cleared a little bit of dirt away. It's so wet because of that artesian spring. This is what a helical pier looks like. Maybe that's like a 10-foot one. And then we did 70 feet of that. This is Cindy. Cindy owns Heartland Builders with Rich. But this is a picture of this this artesian spring running down to the lake. Here's another side of it. And that spring, that water from that spring runs 24/7. It's running all the time. Even in the winter, there is water moving. So that is everything that I have on site eval. If there are any questions or anything that I didn't cover, please yell it out. But this is just next going into contingencies and writing an offer and what we like to see in an offer, or what we recommend seeing in an offer. I guess we don't see the offer, so we don't necessarily care. But these are the things that we recommend. On the right just talks about scams. There are so many vacant land scams. We've had clients that said their neighbor saw somebody looking at the property and then ended up calling them and they said, no, it's not for sale. Absolutely. I think it's really common. There's been more and more common in Kent County that people are selling vacant land, but it's not the actual seller. They just take the money and run. Something nice to be aware of. As far as actually writing the offer, use a correct purchase agreement. There's a vacant land purchase agreement. And then on the next page here, I show all of the contingencies. We just like check all of the contingency boxes. That way, if you want out, you can absolutely get out, but you don't necessarily have to do all of those contingencies. It's just allowing you an out. And then the seller should have a seller's disclosure for vacant land to make sure they have the right one. It shouldn't be a residential property. It should have an acceptable well and septic eval in the location that your clients want to have the house built, or that they want to have the septic system in. So a lot of times the seller will say like, yep, perk test passed or the site eval was good, but you want to know like, what does that mean? So make sure you get the full site eval with the map of where they did the borings as well. And then if that's not where the client wants the house, just get your own. They're easy enough to get. We'll do it for like, I think $250 or something, but usually they hire a realtor because the realtor will do it for you. So we always say like, get your own perk test, your own site eval, which again are the same thing. If the sanitarian requires a backhoe, some municipalities or some counties, they do require a backhoe. Then we can test the soil for buildability too, because we can go a little bit deeper. So it's a difference of doing just an auger, a hand auger that they go down, they pull up the soil and they say like, yep, it's sand, good to go. Or an actual backhoe is out there and they're digging a deeper hole to see what the dirt looks like. Some municipalities require it, some don't. We usually recommend just getting the backhoe out there anyways, because it's one trip and you can figure out if that soil is buildable also. Get the site staked, a survey. We will always, if we can find a corner stake, we will work off of that. But just if you're buying vacant land, it's nice to know where your property lines are from the beginning. And then consider the driveway location and the permit. So if you're going like down the hill and it's going to be a blind driveway, the municipality might say like, you can only put your driveway right here. And then just consider if that's where your clients want that driveway and if it makes sense to them too. And then we say you need 30 or more days of due diligence. It's not like a house when you need that 10-day period. I would say more like 45. You're waiting on the municipality, you're waiting on an excavator. If you do a backhoe, you're waiting on a sanitarian and everything like that. So you're waiting on a lot of people and a lot of things to align. Your due diligence period is a lot longer than just a residential property. This is the just a little screenshot of those contingencies. So it's saying all of the right or what they are, that the soil is suitable for the intended use and blah, blah, blah. I won't bore you in reading them. But then down here also says a couple of contingencies that we recommend in the other or the exceptions, just that a buyer's builder can be out there and look at the property. We especially like that contingency because, you know, your buyer can sneeze and get out of the contract if they need to. It just gives them an easy out. But also we do want a builder, whether it's us or somebody else, to come look at the property to make sure it's what your buyer wants, is what they want to build on, and it's has the ability for them to be able to build on it. Next goes into financing. So before I get too far into it, just know you could use any equity that you have in land towards the down payment of your new construction. So if they bought a piece of property 10 years ago for $100,000 and today it's worth $200,000, they pay that $100,000 off, they can use that $200,000 of equity that they have in their land towards their down payment for their new construction loan. So that one's good to know. This here and the next page also just goes into financing and how it works for new construction. So we take draws as the builder. We're taking draws on our client's loan. They are going to take their construction agreement, their plans or their blueprints, those are the same thing, and then their specs or the selections, those two are the same things also. They need those three things: the construction agreement, their plans, and their specs. They are going to bring that to their lender. The lender is going to give it to underwriting. Underwriting is going to go through the same process pretty much that they do for a house. So I'm sure you guys are very familiar with underwriting. They're looking through debt to income ratios and everything like that. But also, instead of looking at the actual home and appraising that, they're doing the appraisal off of the plans and the specs, and then the price for that. So if I said I was building in like Paris, Michigan for $1.5 million, it's going to be real hard to find comparable properties. That appraisal might potentially come in low. So just so you know how that process works. But once their financing closes, which takes the normal 30 to 45 days, then we will pull the building permits. Then we get started in construction. So how it works as we go through construction, we need money to get the things done, basically. So we'll tell the bank, like in the sworn statement, which this is a little screenshot of what a sworn statement is, we'll say like, okay, we're done through framing. So all the framing labor and materials would be in that spreadsheet, as well as the foundation and excavating, and say that's $250,000. They'll look through that. And then an inspector will take that sworn statement out to the site and say like, yep, all of these things are done. Here's your money. And then we pay the trades with that money. So that's basically how a construction loan works. Usually we take 5 draws, and usually a lender allows 6 draws without any fees. And then 7, 8, 9, if you take more than 6 draws, there are an additional fee associated with those. We usually build, again, 6 to 7 months and take 5 draws. So that's how it usually works for us. Okay, allowances and change orders. So for bank financing, you need those three things: your contract, your blueprint, and your specs. But again, remember how at the beginning I said so many clients so many potential new build clients are afraid that the build is going to go over budget and over timeline. A reason that it goes over budget is because what they're working off of is just allowances. So the builder will say like, yep, you have $10,000 for flooring for your house. And then you go to the flooring store, and this is after you've gone to the bank because you said it's $10,000 for flooring. You go to the flooring store, and you're like, oh my gosh, flooring is so much more than $10,000. So now you spent $20,000 on flooring. That extra $10,000 comes through in a change order. You have to pay that in cash. And that's how you can go over budget which is why we at Heartland Builders say, make all of your selections before you ever break ground. So you know actual numbers, you know actual prices, and you're not working off of allowances that you're like, I don't know if that's enough money or not. But that's a side note and a long rabbit hole for how allowances work and why it's important to choose all of those selections before you ever break ground. And then the last one talks about cash clients. I would say about 30% of our clients pay in cash. They have 3 options when you pay in cash. You can pay the builder upfront before the work is done. We would still take draws. So we would ask for $250,000 for all that same stuff, but then we would do the work, whereas in lending, we had already done the work. The cash clients can also go through a title agency and give 100% of the fund to the title agency, and then we take draws from the title agency. Or a cash client can go through the whole mortgage process and just pay the entire draw before any interest accrues. So they have options, but that is basically how financing works. And then this slide goes into what it looks like for your clients to be paying a construction loan during construction, because they're like, how am I going to pay my current mortgage plus a construction loan? What they're paying are interest only payments on the money that we've taken a draw from. So it's kind of like a credit card. You know, your credit card, your minimum monthly payment is going to change for what your balance is on your credit card. It's the same thing. As we take a draw, $150,000, you're going to pay $750 for that month. And then we're going to ask for another $150,000. So at this point, we've asked for $300,000. You're going to pay that interest only payment at $300,000. And then it just goes up from there. So during that time, you'll cover any property taxes and association dues during construction, but you don't pay any PMI, even if you did less than 20% down. Usually with new construction, you have to do at least 10% down, but you can, with Heartland Builders and LMCU, you can do as low as 5% down. And then my last one at the bottom, you guys probably already know this, but each $10,000 change in the loan amount is about $60 difference in your monthly payment. It's a nice fun fact. That's pretty similar if they're going for a regular mortgage as well. So it's good to know, especially if, you know, you're trying to negotiate between $500,000 and $510,000, like it's not that big of a deal in your monthly payment. Does anybody need a break? Want to stand up, stretch a little bit?
Not me.
Okay.
No.
They're still awake out there, Sarah. They're still awake.
I love that. Perfect. Let's get into some of the building science, building university. I think this is usually Realtor's favorite part. So stop me if you have any questions and things like that. But we will go into kind of what to look for in new construction, and then you can use those things to for what to look for in a current house as well. These are just some common questions that we get to start us off. Like, when can you build? Because a lot of people think that we can't build during the winter. We absolutely can. I will say the only thing that really delays us are the frost laws that come out in the spring. I'm sure you see the big signs out that say no heavy equipment on Class A roads, things like that. Those are frost laws as the frost comes up through the ground. If you bring heavy trucks on any of those roads, they will cause more potholes. So a lot of times if the client has enough property and we know frost laws are coming soon because we know there's a big thaw coming up, we will store the heavy equipment already on their property. So it's just sitting there and waiting. But those are the only thing, that's really the only thing that delays us. Once you dig into the ground, it's at 50 degrees that it always is, which is why geothermal works and things like that. But to answer that question, we build basically 365 days of the year. How long does the property process take? Takes about a year, which is important to know, especially if you're worried about schools or selling your house and things like that. The difference between a production builder and a custom builder, the production builders are building neighborhoods. They're putting up multiple homes and things like that. Some examples are Eastbrook and Allen Edwin, Sable Homes, and that's the only ones I can think of right now, but I'm sure I know that there are a boatload more. Some custom builders are, you know, Heartland Builders, obviously, but Scott Christopher or Mustin is another one. So just a little bit of difference between production and custom and what they're doing, how they're building, if they own land, if they don't own land, things like that. Architect versus architectural designer, we've already kind of covered, but we do sometimes get that question, like, who's going to draw my house? Is it an architect or somebody else? And it's usually an architectural designer. We get that question about price per square foot often, but I feel like I hit that pretty hard. Price per square foot just doesn't always make sense. So we ask, like, where do you want to be? What kind of house do you want? Let's look at real numbers and see if that works. We also say building a house is 75% planning and 25% construction. We do a lot up front. There's a quote, it's like called the rule of tens. So it's $1 to fix and design, $10 during construction, $100 after the fact. So we like to do a ton up front, saves your client a lot of money, things like that. Sorry about that. And then the cost of your home, I kind of already hit as well. The biggest part is in that structure. And then you're always going to have a little in the site and a little in selections. How to control costs and make sure that they don't go out of control. Know those site improvement costs before you get out there, before you buy the land even, or just, you know, as long as you have the knowledge to know that those expenses are coming up, that's fine. But it's good to know those. The value engineering, the plan, the size of the house is a big deal. When I said that 60% of your budget goes into the structure, that's why the size of the house and square footage are such a big deal. But also like turns in the foundation, make the house more and more expensive, and things like that. So if you simplify it, you're going to have a less expensive house. If you think of your classic 1950s ranch style house, those were very inexpensive to build. Those are also awesome, solid houses, but those were inexpensive. It's just a perfect rectangle. Windows and how many windows, how big the windows are. That is obviously the price of the window, but HVAC is also doing their manual J tests and things like that to know how much sunlight is coming in through the house, which is heating the house up. So to know how to size the HVAC, and you always want to right size the HVAC. You don't want to oversize or undersize it.
You want to come up here?
And then to reduce areas that don't impact appraisal value, a lot of those things you can do later. So if you don't have a lot of extra cash, those are just things to think about: porch size, garage size, and deck size. Don't always go into an appraisal, which is kind of also a side note about barn dominiums. When you're building a bigger garage than a house, it's also often hard to find a comparable property for that. So those appraisals you need to either get a little bit creative with, or just consider that you might have a little problem during appraisal if you're building a very big garage and maybe a little bit smaller house. The biggest thing we recommend is making all of those selections before you break ground. That way you know actual numbers and you know the numbers associated with everything that you chose. And then make sure you can afford the house that you design. The person that draws the blueprint needs to know your budget. If you just go to an architectural designer and tell them the things that you want, absolutely, they're just going to draw what you want. We've had it plenty of times that somebody brings us their plans and maybe their budget's $650, and I'm like, this is an $850,000 house, and I hate to burst somebody's bubble, but that is just how it goes. So it's important that what you're designing you can afford, and whoever is drawing it knows your budget. This one goes into tear downs. This little cream color house turned into the blue house. We built that one. It was not a remodel. It was a total tear down. That was an infill lot in Grand Haven. But we say don't do anything until you've talked to the municipality, till you have financial financing in place, until you have permits in place. So don't do anything until you have those things, as far as actually tearing down the property. Otherwise, you're just going to sit there without a house on it, and the municipality might come back to you later and say you couldn't have done that. The cost to tear it down, I usually say it's about $20,000, give or take. It can increase if there is asbestos in the house. They used to use asbestos in everything, insulation and flooring and all of those kinds of things. So you're going to have some kind of abatement. They need to handle that asbestos differently, so it ends up being more expensive. Something to consider also if you're looking with your clients at houses, it might just be this old torn down house that's like halfway torn down anyways, that you're like, to tear it down is going to cost $5,000. You know, it's not going to cost that much. But if they find asbestos in there, they're still going to handle it differently. So something good to keep in mind. The asbestos, the next one, when it was built and what materials were used, go back to that asbestos. Usually a tear down takes a day or two. A lot of our clients will call Habitat for Humanity first. Habitat used to always come out and they would take cabinets or windows or things like that if they could salvage anything, but I will say they do that less and less now, unless maybe it's a brand new water heater, hot water heater or something like that. Your excavator will salvage what they can, recycle what they can, take any of that copper pipe and things like that as well. And then keep in mind if there's an existing well and septic. A lot of times if the well, say it's 2 years old, say the cottage is from 1939, but the well just got drilled 2 years ago, we'll often look at that well and say, like, we're going to update the pump and then reconnect it to the house, but you can save on the cost of drilling a well. And say it's 15 years old, we can look at the price to update the well. We can look at the price to drill a whole new well. We'll show that to the client and let them choose. We'll give them all the facts, give them the pricing and they can choose. The cottages are just tight lake lots usually. I mean, you can have a cottage in the country as well, but what we're usually dealing with are tight lake lots. We can do tear downs on those as well. They're actually quite fun, quite challenging. You don't just have to look at the property. You're still looking at wires above. You're looking at the neighbors' properties. You're looking at erosion and things like that. Consider if it's on water or sewer, if you need well and septic or municipal hookups. Those utilities, where they're at, how they're going to get reconnected to the house, and if you need to move anything, like every once in a while we'll need like a temporary pole to move the electric. We'll build the whole house and then we'll move it back. So all things to consider. If it's on water, we always get the soil borings. Those are the ones that go deeper than your perk test or site eval, so that we know like where that water table is. And then same with the tear down, don't do anything with the existing until financing, municipality conversations have been done, all that kind of thing. And then this is just something that we recommend. If the cottage is going to stay in the family after the death, like it's always going to be in the family, we recommend putting it into a partnership that has rules and then fund the partnership for future repairs and things like that. That's more of a lawyer situation. But a lot of times, I'm sure you know too, like 10 people are signing off on this, on the listing agreement and things like that, and all of the purchase agreement. You need all of these different signatures. It can get a little bit hairy, so we always just recommend either putting in a partnership or talking to a lawyer about the best way to do it for your family. Guaranteed versus not guaranteed pricing is important, because there are things, even if you have guaranteed pricing, like we cannot guarantee what's underneath the ground. We always do our homework, but there are sometimes unforeseen conditions, and you'll find different soil in different locations and things like that. These are a few things that we cannot control. A builder cannot control allowances or client selections. Like, you are welcome to choose anything you want to, but we cannot control that. So we just tell our clients the price, and if they're like, yep, this is what I want, I don't care about the price, I'm willing to pay it, that's absolutely fine. I'm just saying, like, if we told you we were going to build you a $600,000 house and you go crazy in selections, you knew that. Change orders are once construction starts, but the client is in control of those as well if they want to make any changes during construction. Excavating goes back to those soil conditions and what's underneath the ground, those unforeseen conditions underneath the ground. Surveys and engineering costs, those well and septic costs, that all kind of goes back to the soil. Tree clearing can be a little bit tricky. We'll always go out with our clients and we'll wrap the trees with either pink or orange ribbon for what's staying and what's going. We'll talk about that together, but the cost of that can change as they're going through things. Utility costs, like a electrical company might tell us it's going to be $4,500 to get electrical to this house. And then maybe they'll add winter fees later, or the prices go up. And by the time you're actually pulling the utilities, it changes. Municipal fees are all of those permits and things like that. And then flat work, concrete and asphalt driveways, usually how they're pouring that and what they need and how much of all of those things they need aren't always controllable. And then actually all of those pictures there, these are all guaranteed prices. So this whole built-in was a guaranteed price. This light fixture, all of these cabinets, the sink, the appliances, these are all guaranteed prices. We know what the price of those are. This beautiful pink shower, this is a walk-in too, which was very cool. That whole bathroom was a wet room. All of the stuff you see here too, this siding and this deck, this fireplace along with the brick around it and the shiplap above it, the ceiling fan, all of that stuff was guaranteed pricing. We knew the price of that, we shared that, and then we go from there. When's a good time to build or remodel a house? It's really just the same as buying a house. It's the same saying as you probably use in real estate. When's the best time to plant a tree? Either 20 years ago or today. So when you look at the map, as far as like when's a good time to build, right now is the best time to build. A lot of times I like to use this example unless somebody already is waiting, because then it's just rude. But if you had built during COVID when the lumber was going wild, but you got one of those lower interest rates, you're actually further ahead now than if you waited until today to build. So right now is the best time to build. Now we're going to a little bit more of quality of construction, what to look like, what to look for. Foundations and how they're insulated is super important, but it's also extra important to us just because we like energy efficiency. We want our clients to have low energy bills in the future. And we say you cannot have an energy efficient home if you don't have an insulated foundation. So these are some of the things that we're starting with. You can see some different ways to do it. This here is called a superior wall. Great Lakes Superior Wall is in Hamilton, Michigan. And another side note, fun fact, they do a seminar once a month that you can go. They'll talk about Superior Wall. They'll do lunch, and then you can tour the factory. I always think it'd be good for realtors too, because the time that you go down into a foundation or into a lower level and they have a superior wall, your client is going to be like, what is this? Why does this look different? And you can be like, I know all the reasons, baby. So superior wall is called Great Lakes Superior Wall. Once a month they do that. It's very fun. Looking at framing and how the builder frames the house, and then again for houses that are already built, how they're framed. We use a 2x6 wall with open cell spray foam. 2x4 is the most common. The most common way to build in West Michigan is a 2x4 wall with OSB and a house wrap. A house wrap is a weather resistant barrier. That's this Tyvek that I'm pointing to up here, the white wrap. What we like to use is a zip wall. That's this green one. The tape goes along the seams. There's a certain technique that you're using to tape all of that so water doesn't get under there. We like the zip wall because it's not going to flap around if it's windy or different weather. It's not going to move. It's already, all of that weather resistant barrier is baked into that OSB right there. A couple different ways to do it is maybe a 2x6 wall with an OSB and a house wrap, or a 2x4 wall with an OSB and a rigid foam insulation. And then, like I said, our wall is a 2x6 with that open cell spray foam. This at the bottom is what that looks like, open cell spray foam. This is at a top plate. A top plate is where a wall meets the ceiling, and then over any protrusions into the attic. And then insulation really is not just our value. It's also about air sealing the house. We want to build a house so tight that your energy bills are lower in the future. And then just your house still needs to breathe. And I think when you go into most houses that are new construction, you'll hear or see a bath fan that is just running 24/7. And that's how they're getting their mechanical ventilation. That's how they're allowing the house to breathe, getting the stale air out and fresh air in by you opening the door. We feel like that's not very efficient. We use what's called an ERV, or an energy recovery ventilator. And that is, let me see if I have a picture of it. I do. I'll just go to the next one. That is this. So also fun to know, if you're walking through a house and you go into the mechanical room and you see one of these, this is called an energy recovery ventilator. It's a way to mechanically ventilate the house. It's pulling in fresh air. That fresh air is going through a filter, going through a heat exchanger, and then going through the furnace. And then at the same time, it's pulling out all of the stale air. Kind of looks like an X in here, and it's always circulating. So it's always bringing in the fresh air, bringing out the stale air. That's called an ERV, or an energy recovery ventilator. A heat recovery ventilator has a little bit more to do with humidity. These work best in Michigan. This right here is called a mini split. That's a different way to heat and cool a space, a house, an area without vents. Without ducts. You can do ducts with a mini split, but this particular one is for an under garage. So an under garage is exactly that. It's a space underneath the garage. The garage then has spancrete over it, is what it's called. I'm sure you've seen them if you go to the back side of the house and there's a garage door and it's like a workspace down there. That's an under garage. It would be the sidewalls, the floor, and the ceiling are all concrete. And then however the door is done, whether it's a door that you open or a garage door or something like that. But this mini split is conditioning that space. This is a whole house humidifier. So we include those in all of our houses. We just think, in Michigan, especially in the winter, your house is getting dry. We go through and teach our clients how to use it and things like that. And then this is just talking about the furnace and using a high efficiency furnace so that you have, again, lower energy bills in the future. And like I said earlier, it's very important to right size your mechanical equipment. So on the bottom there, it says interior and exterior fit and finish. So this is just talking about when you are going and looking at a builder's work, you recommend that your clients say, like, is this what I'm getting? Oh, I see your trim here. Is this the same trim that would be in my house? Like, your paint lines look fantastic. Is this the same painter that would be painting my house? We always recommend like writing things down, take notes, take pictures. But if you take a client and you're seeing the new construction house, I would just ask those same things. That way you start to get an idea of costs and upgrades or selections and things like that. But also if that builder built that house for somebody specific, or if that's how they build all of their houses. Those are nice things to ask, nice things to know. Green building and energy efficiency. You can go back to architectural design and value engineering. A house is going to make a difference in your energy efficiency. The thermal envelope is your insulation and air sealing. So basically keeping the cold air out in the winter and the warm air out in the summer, and making sure your conditioned space isn't working too hard to keep it warm or cool. Your mechanical systems, there are different ways to do it. You can have a 1-stage, you can have a 2-stage, you can zone different areas. Again, you want to right size all of that equipment, but you want to make sure that's a high efficiency equipment as well. Resource efficiency is just talking about your electrical using LED lights, and then talking about water usage or reusing water and things like that, and try to keep all of those bills low. There's different ways to do it on city water too, and if you can use like a non-potable for your sprinkler systems, that's nice. Then your city water bill isn't expensive. Those are things to ask as you're building, like, are those options for me? And then third-party testing, and then I'll get into a little bit more about inspections too. We do third-party testing as far as like a blower door test. We have somebody come in, you've probably seen this too. So say this house was under construction, you would see a big red tarp basically over this with a blower in front of it. And then they are going to suck out the air in the house and see how much air they can suck out, and if it's coming from any other areas, they can blow it into to see if it's coming through any different areas. So basically a blower door test is seeing where those areas in the house aren't fully insulated, where air is coming through. And then before I get back to third-party testing and inspections, some homeowner orientation, we say it doesn't matter how well it's built if the homeowner doesn't live in it properly. So we want to talk through maintenance. We go through a homeowner orientation and talk about keeping your generator up and your filters and your furnace changed and things like that. If you did a tankless water heater, you have to descale it every once in a while. If you did a tank water heater, is there any maintenance in that? And we talk through all those kinds of things. But then before I go too far, I just want to make sure I answer the question about inspections during the process. So how it usually works is if they're getting a loan, the lender will go through and make sure everything that we say is getting done. Those are your inspections. And then along the way, you're also going to have municipal checks as far as code and making sure like your mechanicals and electrical and your build is all up to code. Your inspector's gonna come through and look through your framing before anything else goes up. That's a pre-drywall inspection, and just make sure that is all built how it's supposed to be. Your trusses get stamped by a structural engineer, but we still need to make sure it's all put together correctly. So all of that stuff gets inspected. And then one question that we'll get from realtors is getting a third-party inspector at the end. We always welcome it. Like, yes, you're more than welcome to have a third-party inspector. We also always say, like, we learn a lot from our clients. So if something did come up, yeah, we want to fix that and make sure whatever we're doing doesn't happen like that again in the future. But I will say, I mean, I'm sure you've seen too, if it's like a perfect house, the inspector needs to make sure that he finds something. So they'll always find something, which is fine. That's fantastic. That's what they're doing. That's their job. We welcome it. And I would say, like, yeah, you can get that for your clients. I remember when I was selling real estate, they found that the blown-in cellulose in the attic wasn't as high as it was supposed to be. The builder called the insulator, and the insulator was like, oh yeah, we ran out that day and we never came back to fill it. So I would say it's not that it's not worth it to do, but you should have done your homework at the beginning to make sure that your builder aligns with everything that you want as far as your philosophy, integrity, and that they're building what they say they were going to build. Does that answer my question about inspections and what those look like?
Yes.
Cool. I will move on. We talk about universal design. So universal design is really wider hallways and wider doorways. It's making sure that anybody can use your house and come into your house. Anybody that's a chair user, or if they're using a walker, even on crutches. And it's also important for our homeowners, like this right here is called a 0 step. You'll see there's no steps to get into the house. How that's done is a lot of times people are like, I don't want a zero step because I'm going to water in my house. This doesn't really have anything to do with the other. Your house still has all of the water graded away and the land graded away and things like that. But how that's done is like, if this was your foundation, your floor joists sit on your foundation like this. If you do a zero step, you have a reverse brick ledge. So there's a little ledge right here that your floor joists are sitting in that. And then you just don't have steps to get into your house. So you can do it on the front door, you can do it on the garage, you can do it on the rear, you can do it on all three. But that's a zero step. So especially if you're a chair user, that way you don't have to do a ramp because you just already have zero step. Those wider doorways, we use a 3-foot door pretty much everywhere throughout the house, and definitely on the front door and the door from the garage and things like that. It doesn't seem to like it be that big of a difference to do a 2 feet 8 inches or a 3-foot door. But I will say it makes a big difference for a chair user or somebody in a walker or crutches, anything like that. But honestly, even like bringing your groceries through, if you're bringing a stroller through, things like that, if you're bringing in furniture or if you're replacing your washer and dryer, all those kinds of things. So the wider hallway, wider doorway, the zero step entry are all elements of universal design. That's what that's called. We also talk through aging in place and adaptability. So aging in place, maybe you're 6 years old and still like very active, and you're like, this is my final house that I'm building. I plan on being here for another 25 years, but aging in place keeps them in their house longer. So you're adding elements like the zero step and things like that, that in the future, maybe grab bar backing behind the drywall. So by the time they need a grab bar, the backing's already there. We talk through those things to keep people in their house longer, which really ends up being a money saver. It's great on emotions and things like that as well. We say that your house should age as gracefully as you do. And that kind of goes back to that homeowner orientation and just making sure that our clients understand how to maintain their house and keep everything up. And then I think really I touched through the rest of those things. The clear floor space and turning radius, our designers are all CAPS certified. So that's certified aging in place, is starting to think about like if you are in a wheelchair and you need to get onto the toilet, what that looks like. If you're in a wheelchair and you need to turn around, what that turning radius looks like. But also using levers instead of knobs and things like that. There are plenty of degenerative diseases, but everybody will be touched by a disability in some way, you know, whether it's your parents getting older, you getting older yourself, a friend in a wheelchair, or our kids. All of those things are things to think about, which is why we think universal design is so important. After the whole house is built and now you're finished, we talk about warranty, what warranty looks like. So a 1-year warranty is the most common. We recommend that you ask a builder what that looks like. What does the warranty period look like? Because most of them have some kind of system. Some of them will say like, yep, when the client calls me, then I go out and fix whatever they need to. But we reach out to our clients. So 3 months after they move in, we'll come back out, and maybe a door was kind of sticky or something like that. You need to lower the threshold and then it's good to go. We just want to make sure like everything that they're living in their house is working how it should. At 6 months, we give a call and just make sure how everything's working like it should, make sure they didn't forget anything from that homeowner orientation. And then at 11 months, we come back out, and that's when we fix like nail pops and butt joint shifting, like where 2 pieces of trim come together or something like that. We just want the house to go through a whole heating and cooling cycle first. But then we always say if it happens in the 13th month or the 13th year, we want to hear about it, because if it's on us, we stand behind our work. If it's on something else, we want to help you get it fixed. We say warranty is just as important as sales, because it really is. If we're building and something goes awry during warranty, I mean, that was a reflection of your work. So warranty is just as important as sales. And if you are looking for your clients, looking for a builder, or talking to builders, make sure you're asking how they do warranty. This here's a little screenshot of the software that we use to keep everything organized. You can put your claims in there if you have anything. That way it's on our radar when we're coming back out at certain times. And then we put notes in there about how it's going to be handled, when trades will be back out to fix it and things like that too. And then how to get started with us as Heartland Builders. So your very first meeting, if you were bringing clients, or if you were meeting yourself, you would meet with me. It's usually about a 2-hour meeting. We go through the process, we answer any questions, and then we get you a ballpark price. you would have already told me that you want like a 2,000 square foot ranch style house with 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, and 9-foot ceilings, and all of those things we would talk through. We would get you a ballpark price. And then when clients say like, yep, ready to move forward, that sounds awesome, then you sign what's called a design services agreement. And then we get started in design. So the fun stuff happens: architectural design, interior design. Once you made all of those selections, then you sign the construction agreement, head to the bank. Once the bank financing is closed, then we pull the building permits and we get started in construction. So it takes about a year. That's kind of our process and how it gets started. And I will also say, if you guys haven't been to our showroom in Holland, it's on the corner of 40th and Lincoln, kind of off of 31. It looks like 2 houses put together. There's a breezeway in the middle, but it's a really nice opportunity for prospects, like our prospective clients, to walk through and see our quality of work and things like that. But it's also a nice opportunity for you to maybe bring clients through so you can show them like, this is what Heartland Builders does. And if you ever want to come through before you bring a client through, just so you know what you're looking at, I would be happy to show you around. So that one's, the address is 208 East 40th. We'd love to see you here. Kind of nice to walk around. We do this education once a quarter also. We'll either do it in Grand Rapids or in Holland. So if you have any colleagues that you know of that want to do it or anything like that, we'd be happy to have them with us. This I kind of talked about already, our 4 simple steps to owning a Heartland Builders house. We talk about what's next. And then we always kind of make sure the client knows like what just happened and what's happening next. So everybody's up to date with communication and what's going to happen with their house. We say here are the rules when you're helping a client find a builder, build a house, buy land, all of those things. Our tagline is easy, fun, and faster than you think. So we really do want things to be fun. So starting off, never let a client buy a site without having a builder look at the land first to help estimate some site improvement costs. Very important, so they know before they actually purchase that land what it's going to look like. And then help your clients pick their builder based on philosophy. We say use your head before you use your heart, but as you know, same thing. If you know, like, and trust somebody, that's usually what you're going to choose. But there are a lot of questions you should choose along the way as well, or a lot of questions you should ask along the way. Make all of your selections before you break ground. That's going to keep you on budget. That one's super important. Work with a builder that has an interior designer to help make those selections. It's a lot of things. Like, you don't even think about the doorknobs and the hinge color that you're going to do. You're going to go through tile and grout color and Schluter. And if you don't know what Schluter is, you're in the majority of people, but it's that little end cap that you have on tile. Like if you see as backsplash, there's backsplash, it's tile, it's grouted at the end. There's a piece that makes it all look put together. That's called Schluter. And you're going to pick the color of that. So there's a lot to choose. So we recommend having an interior designer help. And then how are your clients going to get a blueprint or their plans? Is they going to use a design build firm, independent architectural designer? How are they going to do everything like that? And then kind of actually backing up to that interior designer, we recommend the design studio too. I wouldn't say it's like necessary and like it's not needed, but we just recommend it for timing. Like, it takes a lot of time to go through all of those different stores, and usually all the pretty expensive stuff is in the front. So your clients end up in the back of the store, which is fantastic. That stuff is beautiful and fun too, but it just kind of sucks in every store. You're like, this is pretty. Oh, we can't afford that. Let's go back here. So design studio, super helpful as well. Everything in writing, so know what's guaranteed and what's not, but especially change orders. All change orders signed in advance before the work takes place. And then build a house around your lifestyle, your hobbies, your interests. That's why it's custom. That's why it's fun. We do talk through resale a little bit, but I will say for the most part, our clients are building a custom home because they want a home that they can live in, they can age in, and that's going to be just especially for them. Whew, so that is everything I have. Let me look over some of the things that you guys asked about. And then if you have any questions, I'm open to them. But how to help clients start to finish for the build process, I think I covered it. But if I don't and there are any specific questions, let me know. What to be aware of in the permit process. We handle all the permits as Heartland Builders. Usually custom home builders and even production builders will handle all of those permits. I think one that people forget about when looking at a lot is that driveway permit. but we handle all of that stuff. One thing is that the municipality can change their mind about the cost of certain permits. You're getting a well permit, you're getting a septic permit, you're getting a building permit, all of those. So it's a lot to keep track of. So it's probably a good question to ask the builder, like, how do you handle permits? Are we doing it? Is the client doing it? And how are they going to handle that? Why build in general? That was one of my first ones. It's fun. It's fun. It's awesome. You can get your own custom house that works around your lifestyle. And then inspections during the process, I talked about a little bit too. So if there's any questions, I'm open to it. Otherwise, that's all I got for you.
So much good stuff. So much.
Yes.
Does anyone have any other questions for Sarah?
Hello, Sarah. Hi,
Hello.
this is me, Sam.
Hi.
First, thank you for bringing all this information. It's really, important. I'm really looking forward to it, to meet with you. I have a lot of questions. I know that's a lot of information that you bring, really important, but I would like to go in deeper about new, building a new home. Is there a way that I can contact you to make an appointment and meet with you?
Yeah. So my email address is just sarah@heartlandbuilders.com. Sarah has an H, but it's just sarah@heartlandbuilders.com. And then I would recommend, I honestly like our design studio. I know it's like I'm biased because, it's ours, but it is very cool to walk through. We can start talking about like pricing, what's included, what's not. We call it our inspiration studio is the 2 houses, but there's also a window gallery. So it talks about the difference of like double hung, single hung casement windows, energy efficiency. Downstairs, we have a learning lab where it has all different types of foundation or insulations. So you can like learn what the difference is in insulation. Like, why do I care about a bat or open cell spray foam? Talks about energy efficiency, and we talk through all of that stuff. So you can absolutely contact me and be happy to set up a time to talk more in depth. But I think coming to the Inspiration Studio, which is in Holland, is super helpful.
Okay, I probably will get the information and send an email to you, but I live in Holland, so we can definitely
Awesome.
meet whenever, yeah.
Yeah, very
Mhm.
cool. Very cool.
Holland, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Sam.
Mm.